So, Ruben Amorim has been sacked as manager of Manchester United. Where to start? It's clear that the decision's been made after his comments yesterday, and it's clear that there's a tension between him and the board. I think the board want him to change his way of playing, and I think he wants to keep playing the same way and needs reinforcements to do it, and they're not going to give him those reinforcements. It comes back to a lack of leadership. I mentioned in the last couple of videos, what is United's mission statement? If United were to say, this is how we do it here, what does that look like? Jim Ratcliffe said in February of 2024 that the chief executive and the director of football would essentially set the style of play, and it's up to a manager or a head coach to come in and fulfill the needs and wants of the director of football and the chief executive. So when they picked Ruben Amorim, a manager who plays one system, and it's quite a niche system, they needed to say to him then and there, this is the way we want you to play. And if he said, no, that's not the way I play, then you move on to a different candidate. They didn't do that. They appointed him. And if you're going to appoint him, you have to leave him to it and let him try and put his system in place. But it's doomed to failure if you do it with the players that we had when Amorim came through the door, and you don't add a significant amount of players to the squad that fit the profile of what he wants. The club are just they've done a halfway house. They've not fully backed him with the players that he needs. And then a year in, I think, reading between the lines, they want him to change his system. You shouldn't have picked him as the manager then. And as I say, I think if you've got a very defined way that you want to play and you know what that is, you don't pick Ruben Amorim as your manager, because clearly it wasn't the way he plays. There's an argument to say that he could have been sacked just based on results and certainly style of football and all that kind of stuff. And I'll do a video in more depth on his time at United and on another occasion. But I don't think it is based on results. Of course, it plays a part. We wouldn't have sacked him if we were second. But I think it's more about a conflict between him and the board, and a conflict in direction. Where are we going? I'd planned to do a video today on the direction of the club, on the vision of the club, and I made loads of notes, and I'd done it on the weekend, and I just felt it needed to be pitched slightly differently, so I was going to redo it today, and I will do it. I'll do it later on because I still want to do it before any of this had happened or we knew any of this, and the points are still valid. But for me, what's come out completely vindicates the video I'm going to do later, in that United as a club don't have a clear steer on where they want to go. Some people would disagree with me. Some people would say, well, the fact they've sacked him indicates that they're a strong board. They do have a clear way of doing things that moving forward, and he's not going to meet that criteria, so therefore they've got rid of him. But for me, it looks like yet another decision that's very reactive, having gone into it with an idealistic vision. So they went into Dan Ashworth with an idealistic vision of what he could bring, and within a few months he'd gone. Do your homework on people. They get Ruben Amorim, and again, on the face of it, a really, really good appointment, but is what he represents, does it marry with what you want? He's so wedded to that system, and you should have known that about him. The first few months were always going to be a suck it and see. Completely accepted that November of 2024, when he first came in, we have to play the game. We have to say, right, let's see if this squad of players can adapt to a 3-4-3 system. I think we all suspected maybe they wouldn't be able to, but you've got to give it a bit of time. Maybe the guy's a genius and he can make magic. Within a month or so, I think it was quite clear that, as he said in December, it's going to take an awful lot of investment and time to make this work. So then as a board, you've got to say, well, are we prepared to do that? Are we prepared to have that investment and that time? And the sound coming out of the club was, yes, we are. But their actions didn't match that. So in January last year, we got Dorgu. You could argue, hardly any clubs would get 5 players in January, but you could argue we needed 5, 6 players to give them a chance, but at least 2 or 3 in January. I think that's realistic. But United never do a lot of business in January. They never have done under the Glazers, and it seems like it's the same with Ineos. But if they'd have done that, it'd have given him much more of a chance to have a better second half of the season, more credibility. He'd be further along in what he's trying to achieve, and we probably would have won the Europa League if it had given him more of what he wanted in January. They didn't do that. It was a horrendous second half of the season. We didn't win the Europa League, which would have salvaged it. This summer, can't say they haven't spent money, because they have. But they've gone along with an idea, whether it was theirs or his, to get 2 players in Mbeumo and Cunha of a profile of which we needed 1. And I said that in the summer. We desperately needed a midfielder. We desperately needed proper wing backs. And we needed an experienced striker. So buying Cunha and Mbeumo, who I like both of them, has completely imbalanced the team, because then Bruno, who's the captain, he has to play. Amorim's never not going to play him, so he plays him deeper. Mainu then doesn't get any game time. Ugarte's not playing. Casemiro and Bruno in the midfield is not good enough. So you've got 2 players in there that's not good enough, and 2 players who probably also are not good enough, but are not getting any game time until recently with Ugarte because of injuries. And you've not really, we're a much better team going forward, but you've not really solved that many problems. So I don't know whether that's the board caving into what Amorim wanted, or whether that's the board's idea to get those 2 players. I don't know. But either way, in the summer, it wasn't good enough. But what we've done in the summer is not good enough to give him all the tools he needs to play his system. Bearing in mind, top teams have 2 players for every position. We haven't got 1 player for every position. We haven't got a right wing back. We haven't essentially got a left wing back, really. Not in the way that Amorim would have wanted. We need 2 midfield players, and we need an experienced striker. That's to have 1 player in every position. As I say, if you're aspiring to be the best, that might take a bit longer. I appreciate it might take a bit longer to be the best. You might need 2 or 3 windows to do that. But you need 2 players for every position. You ain't even got 1. So then this season, it comes to a head when he says the comments about it's going to need time, it's going to need investment. I'm starting to see that that's not going to happen. He changes his system against Newcastle. It's quite obvious now that was probably the board leaning on him to do that. And we win the game. And then the next thing's massive. Against Wolves at home, he changes it back. He's obviously, I think retrospectively now, he's obviously done that to prove I'm in charge. I'm wedded to this system. And although we had a good result and a good performance in the first half against Newcastle, playing 4 at the back, I'm not for changing. If you do that, you've got to win, and you've got to win well. And it was the opposite of that. It was a poor performance where Wolves probably could have won the game, and Wolves had 2 points coming into it. You can unpick it all you like in terms of looking at how unlucky they've been in certain games recently. They beat West Ham yesterday and all the day before. They had 2 points coming into it. Can't drop points at home to Wolves. Not when you've dropped points at home to West Ham from a winning position. West Ham, who were relegation bound by the look of it. 10 men Everton for most of the game, and you lose 1-0 at home to them. Bournemouth being in front 3 times and dropping points in that game. It's a cumulative effect then of you're sticking with your system. The board want you to change, but you're not getting the results you need with your system. So there's a friction there, and if you take on the board, there's only going to be 1 winner. The Wolves game for me, as I said at the end of it, was the tipping point where I said I don't think Amorim is fit to be the United manager anymore. But I want to clarify what I meant by that. Under this ownership structure, United are going nowhere. United will not win a Premier League under this ownership structure, and we will not regularly finish season in, season out in the Champions League positions. So my success criteria for any manager working under this structure is to have the odd season here or there where we get into the top 3, 4, regularly finish around 6th, and win a domestic trophy here or there. And I don't think Amorim is good enough in this structure to do that. And Wolves was the moment where I landed on that reckoning, if you like. But I have to say, the problem United have got is that managers, players alike, but let's just focus on managers for now. I think a manager like Ruben Amorim, he's at Sporting Lisbon, and he and Sporting Lisbon clearly have the same vision. So therefore, as a pivotal role in that club, he's built a team, and essentially he's built a culture around that club. Because what they want and what he wants are married together really nicely. He doesn't have any of the same pressure that you've got at Man United either. So he's kind of, it looks like he's kind of built a brotherhood amongst that team, where everyone will fight to the death for each other. There's an environment, there's a culture, and it all works. So that's what he's come from, and that's what he's built. So that's what he's hoping to do at Man United. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But a wider problem, and because you could say the same about Ten Hag when he was at Ajax, he did that and then he comes to United. The wider problem with managers coming into Man United is, I imagine Ruben Amorim at 40 years of age, so he's born in 1985, will have grown up watching football. And when he hears the words Manchester United, he thinks Sir Alex Ferguson, he thinks attacking football, he thinks ridiculously high standards, he thinks only accepting the absolute best. He thinks the treble 99, he thinks late comebacks, he thinks a club with a humongous fan base that is just waiting to be picked up and taken back to the top. And he comes in and he realises the Glazers are the primary owners of the club, who are not motivated to be the best, they're motivated to be the richest. He looks around the club expecting to see small, consistent habits, standards, and he thinks, this is not what I expected at all. All the pressure to achieve is still there, but the principles on which we were built and the principles on which he probably thought about United, what he thought about United that then led him to take the job, they don't exist anymore. Then he's got his direct superiors, for want of a better word, because I don't think Jason Wilcox and Emma Barada are superior to Ruben Amorim. But his direct superiors, they've got no background or pedigree. Ineos have got no background or pedigree. And I heard people when Ten Hag was still here saying, well, at least he's going to get time now under a proper structure. This isn't a proper, it's a structure. It's not, it depends what you mean by proper. It's not a good structure. It's not a successful structure. And I'm going to do a video later talking about this, but as a manager, you come in and there's a disparity between what you think you're walking into and what you're actually walking into. And then you've got all the complexity that I've just been talking about a moment ago, that you walk in and they say, I imagine they say, yeah, you're good to go. 3-4-3, you do it your way, mate. Brilliant. And then a year down the line, they change their minds. There's no clear leadership, there's no clear direction, and there's no people that you would look at as a manager and think, yeah, I'm having you. I trust you. You're a football man. You're someone that I can respect, that I can get on board with. I don't think that exists at United. So manager after manager after manager after manager, particularly good managers, particularly managers with big personalities and good reputations, particularly managers who've been somewhere and built something, they come to United, they're going to fail. I'd go as far to say United would be better getting a middle of the road manager. We need a manager who can deal with chaos. We need a manager who can manage within chaos. We need a manager who's a firefighter. I said when Ten Hag got sacked last year or the year before, we need a standard bearer. And Amorim came in and clearly has tried to implement the standards. The stuff he did with Rashford, the clearing out of some of the characters like Rashford, Sancho, Garnacho, brilliant. Clearly stands with conviction about what he wants to try to achieve, but it didn't marry together with what the club wanted. Clearly it didn't, because it's come to this head now. Partway through his reign, I did a video and I said I think United need a firefighter, because it's a club based on chaos. United's unique selling point is chaos. It's a circus. So you need someone who can manage the circus, who can manage above him and manage below him, and work within the confines of having the Glazers and the legacy damage that they've done, and their incompetence, and the commercial first ethos, having them as your primary owners, and Ineos, who've got absolutely no background in football whatsoever, and employ people who are not fit for purpose. So you need a manager who can handle all that. That isn't going to be Diego Simeone. That isn't going to be, I don't think, Oliver Glasner. That's not going to be the guy from Bournemouth. That's going to be, short term, Darren Fletcher. That's going to be a Michael Carrick. That's going to be a Gareth Southgate. That's going to be an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Those type managers will probably come in and do a better job, or as good a job, as Ruben Amorim, because it isn't just what you produce on the pitch. It's how you can handle the chaos of being Man United's manager. And Ineos have come in and said, we're going to have a very clear way of doing things. I'll talk more about it later, but what is that way? What is that way? Because you can bet your bottom dollar, unless they do go with Glasner, they're not going to go with a 3-4-3 manager again. So the alternative point would be, sometimes you fail forward. Sometimes you make a mistake and you learn from it, and you don't do that again. But the other way of looking at it is that it's a group of people who don't really know what they're doing. And it's the lunatics in charge of the asylum, as far as I can see. So what next? Darren Fletcher as interim. I don't know for how long. What experience, what credentials does he have to coach a Premier League football team? I don't know. What do we do now about January signings? We'll find out in the next few days, I guess, or maybe even today. But do we kick everything to the end of the season now? Do we say, we'll appoint a full-time manager at the end of the season, we're going to take stock, we won't buy any players because that might be a little bit short-sighted when we haven't got a manager, so we're not going to buy any players until the summer, and we just suck it and see for the rest of the season with an interim. But we've got half a season to go. We've got an FA Cup to play for, and this is a poor league where if we fully take advantage if we'd have fully taken advantage of the opportunities we'd had, we'd probably be third or second at the moment. And I'm not talking about winning every game. I mean those drop points at home to Everton, West Ham, Bournemouth and Wolves, or even just Everton, West Ham and Wolves. So there's an opportunity there. So what do you do? Again, I would say, if the club has a very clear idea of what they're trying to achieve and what they're striving for as a club, that's supposed to supersede a manager. The idea is you could go and buy players in January without a manager, because you've got a clear way. You're setting an agenda. My big concern with this, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. They don't have a clear agenda. I think that's quite obvious, and that's a problem. But even if the people that are there, Barada, Wilcox, do we really trust them to set an agenda? Do we really trust them to pick a style of play for Manchester United? I've said before, I want United people there. But failing that, if you've not got United people there, I want the best people there. I want someone with background, with pedigree in those roles, chief executive and director of football, because if they're setting the tone, they ain't got any knowledge of Man United, but they're an expert operator and they've done good things elsewhere, you're still going to be flawed because the Glazers own the club and because you got Jim Ratcliffe above you. So just like a manager's role, the director of football, the chief executive, they could have a great reputation somewhere else and they come in at United and it doesn't work out because the pieces of the jigsaw are not above them. The money's not there to do what they need to do. We cut corners all the time. We're a commercial first club. All of that's still going to be problematic, but you give yourself the best possible chance if you get the best possible people through the door. We haven't got those people. So I think absolutely Amorim, probably it reached the end of its lifespan, yeah. And just on results, you could have said that without all the hoo-ha of the last few days. But as I've said many times before, long gone are the days where you go, right, now we're going to be all right because we've got rid of the manager. I heard someone earlier on talk about bounce, say, well, Darren Fletcher now, we're going nostalgia. Darren Fletcher's going to probably come in and we're going to win a few games on the run and everything. It'll be Darren's at the wheel and all that kind of stuff. And we'll be all right for the next year until it all shit hits the fan again. United haven't had a managerial bounce since Solskjaer replaced Mourinho. We don't get managerial bounces anymore because so entrenched is the problems within the club, so entrenched is the stench of such a poor culture, which Ratcliffe was supposed to come in to sort out, and he hasn't sorted out at all. So deep are those problems that a manager comes into it, and as I said before, there's that disparity. Coming into the mighty Man United, and you're looking around thinking, this wasn't what I expected it to be, and I think players are the same. So I thought yesterday, if he goes, I'm intrigued by Maresca. One of the reasons that Maresca left Chelsea, one of many reasons, was that he apparently spoken to City about being Pep's replacement. So I don't know if it would happen for him to come to United. One of the other reasons he left is he was being dictated to as to what to do as a manager. So you going out of the frying pan into the fire from his perspective. I'm intrigued by him because he's a disciple of Pep. He did very well, obviously, at Leicester. I thought he did well in his first season at Chelsea. He's largely untried in many ways. But I think it would be a fresh appointment rather than Glasner's just doomed to failure. Glasner's another Amorim or Ten Hag who's done a great job at, with no disrespect to Crystal Palace, a very different, let's say in a very different environment. He did a brilliant job at Eintracht Frankfurt as well. But again, he's got the autonomy at Frankfurt to build something that marries together with his ethos. Are you going to find a guy that can come in, not just, this is the problem, we don't just need a good manager. As I said before, in fact, it'd probably be better if we had a middle-of-the-road manager. But we don't just need a good manager. We need someone who's a good manager who can come in, deal with the pressure of being Man United manager and everything that comes with that. So let's just go through that. You've got huge levels of scrutiny because we're still a massive club. But you're not... the things that we would ideally want to achieve, we probably can't because the owners are shit. And you've got a board that don't know what they're doing. You've got... some of the fan base have really high expectations. Some of them will just tolerate whatever. You've got ex-players as pundits who are always going to be chipping away at you. United are the biggest story every day of the week. When City won the treble, there was hardly any interaction with it on social media at all. A day later, there was a story about United's takeover, which never ended up going through, obviously, which had something like 5 times the amount of interactions. United are big news, we're big business. And a manager has to be able to come in and deal with all of that. They also have to come in and fit what this group of people who are running the club want, as well as being a good manager who can handle all the pressures and trappings of being United's manager. I'm not sure who that is, and I don't think it's Oliver Glasner. It's probably not Enzo Maresca, but I'm just intrigued by him. I'll be honest, I'm intrigued by him. He's available. Is it worth a shout? I could be bang wrong. But it'd be interesting in these next few days to see what happens. The bigger picture here is, and I'm going to do a video on it later. Let's have it right. We need new owners. We need a whole new reset at the club. But that's not going to happen. There's no appetite for that. The fans don't want it. So it makes me laugh when fans go on and on about the board and stick with the manager. He needs patience. He needs time. This board's let him down, and then they turn up the next week and they're saying the same about the next manager, and they're not seeing that the bigger problem here is whoever the manager is. And I don't think we've picked the right managers over the years. I must say, you don't just stick with the manager just because the board's shit. The two things can exist together. The board's shit and the managers that they pick are not good enough or don't fit the ethos of the board and don't fit Manchester United. But the bigger picture is the problem, as it always is. So I forgot where I was going with that. Yeah, what I was going to say is the fans, as much as they might say, well, you know, it's not just on Amorim, and you know we shouldn't be on this rinse and repeat cycle. Well, you've got no appetite to get the board to get the Glazers out. You've got no appetite to get Ineos out. So Ineos and the Glazers are our owners, and I said it under Ten Hag, and I said it under Amorim, and I'll say it under the next manager. Whoever comes in has got to work within that limited structure, break through a ceiling and get us third or fourth once every now and again and win a cup. Break through the ceiling and make sure we finish in the top 6 season in, season out. You've got to be able to do that with mitigating factors if you can't. But you've got to be able to do that. We've got to pick someone who can do that. Must say, just finally, on Ruben Amorim, good on you, Ruben, for doing a turd on the way out. I think you've highlighted, that's probably the wrong analogy, you've highlighted with courage some of the shortcomings of this club on your way out of the door. He knew very well, with how specific he was with what he said yesterday, the potential repercussions that could have. And he's the first full-time manager that we've had that's been brave enough to say something. So I'll do a video on Amorim at some point in his tenure. It won't be looked back on with any fondness, I don't think. But the two things I thank him for are getting rid of Marcus Rashford, and on the way out of the door, highlighting what we all know, but at least being brave enough to say it. It's going to be a busy day today. Glazers out.